There is a national outcry as millions call for an end to systemic racism and injustice. And although a common rallying cry centers on the idea that Black Lives Matter, some supporters say that fight for justice is for everyone. News 8's Katira Winfrey sat down with Monica Medina with the Indiana Latino Expo for tonight's We Stand Together.
Talk about why it's so important to amplify voices of all minority communities.
You know, the Latino community is a very culturally diverse community. In fact, we come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. So, you know, to say that it is a race, it is not. It is the prime example of a variety of races coming together to blend and become part of a culture that has the same values, a lot of the same norms and behaviors. So if we look at what a Latino might be, it isn't always just language, because some folks don't speak Spanish. But I would say that many of them have the same values related to family, related to spirituality. And so it's important that non-Latinos understand that to begin with, so that when we talk about issues of social justice, it's automatic that we think of all of our brothers and sisters, all of us coming together. While we may have different histories, the histories of oppression are very similar.
I know for so many people, the George Floyd incident was an exclamation point in time where people can look at and say, wow, this really shows a little bit of the systemic racism or the injustices that Black and brown people have faced. Is that another, is that something you also noticed, or you saw that was an exclamation point in time?
Oh, absolutely. And so the board of directors came together to provide a statement that basically states, you know, we are supportive of all of the different types of activities that that our communities have aligned for us to recognize the injustices and also to understand how we need to make changes. So you can't change the climate of the country or a city if you don't address the inequities within the policies, within the dispositions of people that make those policies. And so we recognize that we all have to come together. It's not just about the Black community, because right now it's the Black community that needs our help. But if we don't help the Black community, then how can we all be coming together as a community? There's no community.
And I always like to find the similarities when we talk about racial injustices within the Black community and not feeling like they are treated equally. It's kind of the same narrative that you can tell for immigrants, people coming to America, and the feeling that I'm not welcome here. Does that create some type of bond or some type of understanding when you look at Latinos and Black people?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of oppression has been here for many years. We're considered second-class citizens. I mean, just the fact that people continue to look at bilingual children or children who are learning to speak English, adults who are learning to speak English from a deficit perspective. You are not smart enough because you can't speak English. Never mind that you are now speaking 2 and possibly 3 different languages. And the same is true with our African-American students who come from their communities with a dialect, with a way to communicate that is very efficient and effective in their communities. And they come to schools where we see them as less than, right, because they can't speak a standard English. When we look at people that live at poverty, we assume, we blame folks because they live in poverty. Never mind then the barriers that we've placed on these people who didn't get the education, who didn't get the opportunities, who are attempting to do better in their life, but because of institutional racism, right, the systemic inequities that exist, they're not going to have the opportunity to advance. And those opportunities are very limited.
Anything else you think is important to add, or maybe something you've learned or your mind's been open to in recent months.
It's not enough for us to be able to just say we're going to do something. You have to act on it, and you have to do. And it could be something simple as reading a book, listening to a TED Talk, and having that very hard conversation with yourself about bias and how every day of our lives, it's becoming even more intentional that through different avenues, we're becoming even more biased, prejudiced, discriminatory. And so we don't have to think, right? But the thinking has to begin with ourselves. And then we have to be able to do. To go to a Black Lives Matter organization type of demonstration is not enough. That's not enough. We have to do more than that. While our demonstrations are important, we have to educate ourselves, and we have to, within our own areas, begin to address those inequities.
Remember, you can listen to all of our We Stand Together reports on our All Indiana Podcast Network. You can find tonight's episode and others online at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.